As soon as you have more than a couple pages of code in a project, you'll want to use the Visual Studio navigation features to move intelligently through your code. For this demonstration, I'm using this Navigating C#. Now, I just opened this project, and I haven't looked at any files yet. I'm going to open this node and double-click on Author. Then, as I look through my code, I double-click on Book, and then maybe back to Author, and then over to Program.cs, and then up to my References folder, and maybe I open this property window. Visual Studio is tracking my progress. And if you look at the top of my screen, you'll see that there is a back button and a forward button here. Also, in the View menu is a Navigate Backward or a Navigate Forward. This does exactly what you'd expect. You can navigate backwards through the files you had open and forward through the files. Another way of navigating for items is to choose Navigate To. Now you type in something you want to search for inside your project. I'm going to look for author. And there's 3 places I can navigate to. The author, which is a class, the C# file, or this method called Add Book to Author. I'll double click here. And as you see, it took me over to that Add Book to Author. Let me go back to the book class, put my cursor here. Another feature is the Go To command. Control G, or Go To from this menu. This is handy if you already know the line number you want to return back to. Let's say I want to go to line 32. That moves me down to line 32. Speaking of moving around in your code, here's another feature that I find a lot of developers are not familiar with. Look at this method, cap price at minimum. It's got a number of curly braces in here. If I pick one of the curly braces, say this first curly brace, it highlights the lower curly brace. I can move to the matching curly brace with a keystroke. The keystroke is the control and the right square brace. When you press that keystroke again, it moves back to the first curly brace. Let's try that with the if statement. I'll move my cursor here and then use the same keystroke to move back and forth. Now let's look at another convenience. When I select this current price, after about a 1-second wait, Visual Studio highlights the word current price with a gray background and also highlights it on line 28 and line 34. This is so that you can quickly look through your document and see every place that you're using this inbound parameter. Let's try it up here, Book ID. Here I'm not using Book ID, but I am using the new price. Now I want to show you how to find a definition of a class or a definition of a method. I'll return to my program.cs file, and I'm interested in knowing where this book class is defined. So I can select this book, right-click on it, and choose Go to Definition, or press the F12 key. That takes me over to the book class where I can read more about that class. Then, of course, I can click on the back button to take me back to where I instantiated the book. This also works with methods. I can click on this Update Price, press F12. It takes me over to where the Update Price method is defined. And then click on the back button to go back. You also might want to know how many different places are using this. You can see I'm calling Update Price down here in 2 different places. One of the things you can do in Visual Studio is right-click on this and choose Find All References. Now I get a list down in the bottom of the 3 places in my code where Update Price is being used or defined. This first one shows where it's being defined. It's inside the book.cs class. And then these other ones show me where it's being called. And as I click on them, it automatically navigates me to those locations. Close that window. Let me go over to the Update Price by pressing F12. Let me show you one other feature. Right-click and choose View Call Hierarchy. What this does is show all the calls to Update Price. So I can see that in another demo and in main, I've got the calls. And I can see that from within this method, I'm making some calls out. I'm calling a method called Cap Price at Maximum and WriteLine. Now notice one of these is a method that I wrote, but this second method, WriteLine, is one that's part of one of the .NET Framework classes. And when I double click on these items, if I double click on Cap Price at Maximum, it takes me to my definition. But when I double click on WriteLine, it takes me to this special file. This works in C#. What's happening here is Visual Studio is looking up the basic definition of the console class and giving me a simple view of that. Let me show you another way of getting to this. I'll go over to my program class. I'll click on string, and I'll press F12. The string class is not one of the types I wrote. It's one that's part of the .NET framework. So when I press F12, in this case, it takes me to this simplified view of that string class. I have one more demonstration I'd like to show, and that's called the bookmark. Let me close this window and go to my book class. I can drop little bookmarks in my code that I can use for navigation purposes. Let's say I want to go to this line of code here. So what I can do is come up to this toolbar and toggle a bookmark. You'll see there's this gray item on the sidebar over here. Then I'll come down to this if statement and do the same thing. And then down here where I'm doing this else statement and add a third bookmark. Now that I got these 3 bookmarks in there, I can use these forward and backward buttons here to move through my bookmarks. 1, 2, 3. And to remove a bookmark, I can click on this to clear all the bookmarks in my application. So as you can see, there are many different ways to navigate your code besides using the traditional up-down arrows and mouse scroll bars. Why don't you try a few of these new techniques on your next project?